Hey everyone, Skeletor here again. So one of the things I brought up in my last video was about how haste is not really going to affect your overall downtime in your rotation. I just wanted to take a moment here to show you an example of why that is. So what I have here is a very crudely made spreadsheet. This is not the most accurate thing that exists. The most accurate model we have is actually using simulation craft. But not everybody wants to use that, so I have a sort of a little hack here, or demonstration, to show the effects of haste on downtime, and how it relates to us in Battle for Azeroth and pretty much any other expansion. So in Legion, the reason that haste really helped us in Legion was we had that judgment window to work around. It was possible you could be in a situation where you had 5 holy power, but your judgment debuff was not on the target, so you pretty much either had to sit there and wait on your hands to attack while moves were already off cooldown that you could press, but you didn't want to overcap your holy power, so you had to sit there and wait for judgment. That was the main factor behind haste being such a huge contribution to downtime in Legion. Now, as we know in Battle for Azeroth, that judgment window is gone. It's now just for a single debuff. So, what we have here is a little spreadsheet. I have a few talent setups. I'm not doing every talent. Just wanted to do a few. Right now we have the length of the fight set to 1 minute. And 0% haste. Now off the bat you'll probably see here some of these are 0% or negative downtime. You can ignore that. Again, this spreadsheet isn't perfect. It doesn't respect the global cooldown. So it just presses the buttons once they're off cooldown as soon as they're off cooldown. So imagine it's your opener at the start of the fight. It's pressing Hammer, Wrath, Crusader Strike, Blade of Justice, all that at the same time. So again, this is for a general idea. It's not meant to be perfect. And also on the right here, I have the relation to how long a cooldown of a spell is in relation to the GCD. We're going to start there instead. So again, we're at 0% haste here, so no modifiers. We know that Crusader Strike is a 6-second cooldown. Well, if we take that 6-second cooldown and divide it by the GCD, which is 1.5 seconds, that's 4. So Crusader Strike is a 4 GCD cooldown. Blade of Justice is a 7 GCD cooldown. Judgment is an 8 GCD cooldown. Hammer of Wrath is a 5 GCD cooldown. That's pretty straightforward. Now, Fire as a Justice is a little bit special. What that does to Crusader Strike is, aside from the HP, it reduces the cooldown by 1 second. So 1 second is obviously less than the GCD, so we get some fractional results there. And also we have other skills like Wake of Ashes, Avenging Wrath, Consecration, and Shield of Vengeance. None of these are affected by haste. The cooldown is static, so Wake of Ashes is 45 seconds, which at 0% haste is still 30 GCDs. Avenging Wrath is 120, which is 80. Shield of Vengeance is the same. Obviously, if you choose the Unbreakable Spirit talent, that would be less. And Consecration is a 20-second cooldown. So again, that's a fractional one there because it doesn't divide into it evenly. Now what I'm going to do here is change the haste. I want you to watch how these numbers change. You're going to see something. So let's say we have 10% haste. What happens here is Crusader Strike still cools down in 4 GCDs. Blade of Justice still takes 7. Judgment still takes 8. Hammer of Wrath still takes 5. And you can see here that it's all proportional. We might have access to those abilities faster, but in essence, that cooldown being reduced doesn't increase the overall usage of them, or doesn't increase our active time, more specifically. So let's say we have 11% haste here on a 60-second fight, so we have some downtime numbers here. Again, some of these are kind of low because they don't fully respect the global cooldown, It's just for an idea. So there's 11%, 12%. You can see it can jump quite a bit. One of the reasons you'll see that the downtime percent jumps quite a bit is another thing with haste. Just because you have a higher percentage of haste doesn't mean that the fight length that you're set to will benefit from that. So what I'm saying is, let's say you have two people. Let's assume they have the identical talent setup, identical gear, but for some reason one person has more haste than the other person. So let's say they're in a fight. At the end of the fight, you look at the downtime, and you might notice the person who had higher haste had more downtime. The reason that can happen is because, like I said, just because you have shorter cooldowns doesn't mean the length of the fight will accurately reflect that or make use of it. So using the example of 1 minute here, we can see the downtime for how cons and DP is at 1.8%. Here, let's go to 0 again. Start with 0. So how cons DP is negative 2.5. We go to 1%, it's negative 1.5. Go to 2%, it's negative 0.5. What's happening there is, even let's say you have a 5-second cooldown of a skill that's reduced by haste, and it's reduced to 4.7. It's possible at the end of a fight you may still only be able to use that skill 10 times, even though your cooldown's slightly shorter than someone else who has less haste than you. So it all really depends on how long you are in that fight for. Now, one of the common things is people saying if you have a bunch of haste, however, it'll feel fine. So we can go ahead, we can plug 40% haste in here. And we can still see from some of our earlier results, we were still in that 1.8% range and low numbers, even at 40% haste. That same level of downtime still does exist here. And again, in terms of the cooldowns of the skills, Crusader Strike still takes 4 GCDs. That's static, 7, 8, 5. These things are, it's just set that way. It's not going to change. Now, Fist of Justice there, again, it's a little bit of a wild card because it reduces the cooldown by 1 second from 6 to 5. And other skills like Avenging Wrath and Shield of Vengeance and Consecration, they're all not affected. The cooldown of the skill is not affected by haste, so they'll all fluctuate a bit there. But again, our main rotational moves are locked to the GCD. They all pay respect to the GCD. And that's all I had for you. I'll make a link to this so you can make a copy of this yourself. So you can just go to File, make a copy. And when you have your own copy, you can change some of these numbers and do whatever you want. Again, this sheet isn't perfect. It doesn't respect the global cooldown, along with a few other things. One scenario is that during Avenging Wrath, on average, someone will at least get 3 Hammer Wraths. The breakpoint to get 4 Hammer Wraths and 1 Avenging Wrath is 50% haste. But I don't have that in this spreadsheet. Again, this is just meant to be a quick example. And you can just stick to the front page here. I mean, there's the back end page here where it just has some numbers and things I was doing where it pulls from. If you want to look at those, you can. If you know what you're doing, want to change it around, definitely go ahead and do that. You can have some fun here. You can change the length of the fight. There is a maximum length you should use, though. Let me double check here. As you can see, I put the cooldown for Hammer Wrath to 120 seconds to line up with Avenging Wrath, just to make it easier on me. So what happens as soon as it goes into Avenging Wrath, it fires off 3 Hammer Wraths at once. But what we have here is the maximum amount of time that you want to set your fight length to is 719 seconds, which is a bit excessive, which you should never be in a fight that long, but I had to go up to that point. So you could effectively change this to 719 seconds if you want to. And you can see the downtime there. Again, you can play with the haste. If you want 10% haste, there's 10% haste. 20, there's 20. I mean, you can do fractional. if you want 11.15. And as you change those numbers here, you can get a better idea of what's going on here. So this column, this is the HP gain from the use of your skills. This, just the number of times the ability was used. So in a 719 second fight, we got 6 uses of Avenging Wrath, 6 uses of Shield of Vengeance, 160 of Fires of Justice. You were using Crusader Strike, it was 134. Just some stuff there for you to look at. Again, not a super precise method. The more precise thing to do is to use Simulation Craft, but if you don't know how or don't want to, this is just a fun little sheet you can play around with, or if you can make it better, go ahead and make it better and let me know. But that's all I have for you. If you do have any questions, go ahead and let me know. Have a great day.